My name is Frank. I'm 64 years old, a retired Marine who thought I'd left the battles behind me. After 30 years working maintenance shifts at the copper plant and a lifetime of saving every nickel, I finally had something solid: 120 acres of dry Arizona ranch land, a weathered house I kept standing with my own hands, and a dozen head of cattle. It wasn't much to look at compared to the big spreads around Flagstaff, but it was mine. I paid the bank every month until the debt was gone, and when the final payment cleared 2 years ago, I kept the receipt folded in my wallet like a medal. Most mornings, I sit on the porch with black coffee and watch the sun come up over the ridge. My daughter Laura and her husband Derek live close enough to drop by on weekends. Derek shakes my hand too hard, always wearing cologne that smells like money. He talks about big ideas for land development, while I just nod and change the subject. I figured he was all talk. Then, one Tuesday in late spring, I pulled a thick envelope out of the mailbox. Bank logo on the corner, my name typed across the front. Inside was a packet labeled Property Transfer Authorization. At first I thought it was junk, some refinance solicitation, but the second page stopped me cold. There was my name printed beneath a bold black line, and under it, a signature that was supposed to be mine. I know my own hand. 30 years of signing duty rosters, pay slips, loan papers. My F always had a long crossbar. My K leaned forward like it was marching. The marks on that page looked close but not right. Stiffer, rushed, like someone had practiced but never quite learned the rhythm. I carried the papers inside, laid them flat on the kitchen table. The wording said, "Consent to collateralization" and "Joint venture mortgage agreement." Derek's name was scribbled on the line below mine, neat and cocky. I ran my finger across that false version of my name, and for the first time in decades, I felt the same chill I'd felt walking patrol at night in a hostile village. It was my signature, but I hadn't written it. The following Saturday, Derek pulled into the ranch yard with a brand new Silverado, dust flying behind him like he owned the whole valley. He stepped out in boots too clean for real work, clapped me on the back, and waved to a couple of neighbors who'd stopped at the fence line. "Big things coming, folks," he said, loud enough for the whole county to hear. "This place is going to be the crown jewel of Verde Canyon. Resort cabins, horseback tours, even a golf range. You'll want to book early." The neighbors laughed politely, but my stomach turned. I'd spent years paying taxes, mending fences, hauling water in droughts just to keep this land alive. And here was Derek, parading like some visionary. I caught him by the truck. "Derek, what the hell are you talking about?" He grinned, teeth white against a spray-tanned face. "Didn't Laura tell you? Paperwork's done, financing approved. You won't have to worry about this dusty ranch anymore. We're turning it into something profitable." I held up the envelope I'd taken from the mailbox. "You mean this paperwork?" His grin didn't falter. "Exactly. Took a while to get the bank comfortable, but your signature sealed it." My pulse pounded in my ears. That wasn't my signature. Derek leaned closer, dropping his voice so the neighbors couldn't hear. "Frank, don't embarrass yourself. Nobody at the bank questions it. The deal's already rolling. You should be thanking me. You'll still get a share, and you can relax instead of slaving over fences." "Relax?" I spat the word. "This ranch is my blood." He shrugged. "Then maybe it's time you let some of us take over the future. Laura and I have plans. You've had your run. Now it's about family wealth, not stubborn pride." I looked past him, to the mesquite trees I'd planted 20 years earlier with Laura sitting on my shoulders, handing me seedlings. The thought of bulldozers chewing through that ground made my chest tighten. Derek saw the look and smirked. "Don't worry, old man. You won't have to lift a finger. Just sign where you're told." I folded the papers back into the envelope and shoved it into my pocket. My hands were steady, but inside I felt the same pressure I'd felt once when a commanding officer told me to retreat, when I knew holding the line was the only way through. This wasn't just a business plan. It was a theft dressed up in family talk. And Derek had just made it clear. This was only the beginning. That evening, Laura invited me to supper at their place. Derek carved steaks like a man already celebrating, pouring himself bourbon before even asking if I wanted a glass. Laura set the table, avoiding my eyes the whole time. I waited until the plates were down. "Laura," I said, calm but sharp, "did you know about the papers?" Her hand froze on the salt shaker. "Dad, Derek's just trying to help. The ranch could be worth 10 times more if—" "It's worth exactly what I bled for," I cut in. "No paper in the world changes that." Derek leaned back, sipping his drink. "Come on, Frank. This isn't betrayal, it's progress. You get to step back, enjoy retirement. Let us handle the heavy lifting." "Heavy lifting?" I barked. "You've never mended a fence line in August heat. You've never hauled a calf out of mud at 2 in the morning. Don't tell me about heavy lifting." Laura put a hand on his arm, her voice low. "Dad, Derek really thinks this is best for all of us. You don't have to worry anymore." I looked at my daughter, the same girl who used to ride with me at dawn, laughing when dust stuck to her cheeks. "Laura, do you believe I signed that contract?" She hesitated. Just long enough. Her silence said more than any words. Derek filled the gap, his tone smooth as oil. "Maybe you forgot. Banks don't process documents without checks. There's no mistake." My jaw clenched. I reached into my pocket, pulled the envelope, and slapped it on the table. "That isn't my handwriting. You know it. She knows it. And sooner or later, the bank will know it." Derek's smile thinned. He set his glass down slowly, leaned forward until his eyes locked on mine. "Then prove it, old man." The room went silent except for the ticking wall clock. Laura finally whispered, "Dad, please, let's not fight." But Derek's eyes never left mine. He wanted this fight. He wanted me cornered. And as I stared back, one thought burned hotter than the bourbon fumes between us. If that signature wasn't mine, whose hand had dragged the pen? Monday morning, I drove into town with the envelope on the passenger seat. The bank branch sat on Main Street. Same building where I'd made every payment for 20 years. The teller knew me by name, but today she went stiff when she pulled up my account. "Mr. Hall," she said carefully, "our system shows a transfer authorization on file. Collateral for a development loan. The paperwork is signed and notarized." I leaned on the counter. "That's funny, because I never signed a damn thing." Her eyes darted to the manager's office. A few minutes later, a man in a gray suit appeared, folder in hand. He showed me the same documents I'd found in my mailbox, except this copy had a notary stamp on the bottom. "Everything looks in order, sir," he said, voice polished and bland. "If you'd like to contest, you'll need to bring an attorney." I studied the signature again. The loops were wrong, the pressure uneven, but to an untrained eye it was close enough. My gut churned. They were already moving money on paper, using my land as collateral. When I stepped out of the bank, Tom Jenkins was leaning against his pickup across the street. He waved me over. Tom was 68, wiry as barbed wire, another Marine who'd survived desert nights and jungle rot with me 40 years ago. He didn't smile much, but when he did, it meant trouble for somebody. "Frank," he said, "I heard Derek jawing at the feed store, telling anyone who'd listen that your ranch is tied up in some big project. Folks think you're cashing out. My throat tightened. I'm not cashing out. I'm being robbed. Tom squinted. That boy's slick, but he ain't careful. If you want help, I still got a few tricks from the old days. Cameras, recorders. Things folks forget are legal if you're protecting your own property. I nodded, more grateful than I could say. I may need them sooner than you think. Driving back up the dirt road to the ranch, I rehearsed how I'd confront Derek, how I'd force Laura to see what was happening. But when I pulled into the driveway, my stomach dropped. The iron gate I'd welded myself was shut tight. A shiny new padlock hung from the chain. My key wouldn't fit. I sat there in the truck, dust settling around me, staring at my own ranch like I was some trespasser. Somebody had changed the locks. I parked outside the locked gate until dusk, hoping maybe Laura would drive up, see me stranded, and swing it open. But when Derek's Silverado appeared instead, he rolled down the window just enough to talk. "Frank, you should head back to town," he said like he was dismissing a delivery man. "We've got surveyors coming tomorrow. Don't want confusion." "My cattle are in that pasture," I growled. "They'll be moved," he said. "We've got it handled." Before I could answer, Laura's voice floated from the passenger seat. "Dad, please. This is for the best. Let Derek manage it." She wouldn't even meet my eyes. My own daughter, siding with him like I was some stubborn relic standing in the way of her future. The truck pulled through the gate, the new padlock snapping shut behind them. I sat in my pickup another hour, watching the lights come on in the ranch house, a house I'd roofed with my own hands after a monsoon tore the shingles loose. From the road it looked smaller, like the walls were already closing me out. By 9 o'clock, I gave up. I drove into town, grabbed a burger and a paper sack, and parked in the empty lot behind the VFW hall. Ate cold fries off the dashboard, while coyotes howled out past the train tracks. 50 years ago, I'd eaten field rations under enemy fire. Tonight felt lonelier. The next morning, a thick envelope arrived at my P.O. box. Return address, County Recorder's Office. My hands shook as I tore it open. Notice of property transfer pending. It spelled out in black and white what Derek had been boasting. The ranch was in the middle of a collateralized loan transaction, awaiting final processing. Once the bank released funds, the land would be tied to a project I'd never agreed to. At the bottom was that forged signature again. My name, my future, bent into someone else's plan. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it back in the envelope. Not out of respect, but because I knew this wasn't just another insult. This was proof that if I didn't act soon, I'd lose everything. I didn't sleep that night. The paper from the recorder's office lay on the table like a loaded gun. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that false version of my name, mocking me, trying to erase me. At 2 a.m. I made coffee strong enough to wake the dead and sat on the porch of my rented room above the feed store. Across the street, a neon sign flickered. Cheap motel letters burned out so it only read MO_E. That's what I felt like. Half a man, half a name. Then something snapped. I thought back to the core. To nights when orders made no sense and we had to rely on each other just to stay breathing. Our drill sergeant had a phrase, "If you're surrounded, that just means you can attack in every direction." Derek thought locking me out meant I was finished. But all it meant was I finally saw him for what he was, a coward hiding behind paperwork and my daughter's trust. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Tom's number. He answered on the second ring, gravel still in his voice from sleep. "Frank?" "I need your help," I said. "Not just advice, action." He was quiet a beat then. Say when. Tomorrow. I'll bring the forged papers. You bring whatever gear you still got. Tom chuckled low, the sound of a man itching for a fight. You know I never threw any of that junk away. We'll start with surveillance. Catch him in his own words. For the first time in weeks, my chest loosened. I had a plan forming, and I wasn't alone. I ended the call and stared at the forged signature one more time. The man who tried to copy my hand had no idea what those letters meant. Years of sweat, busted knuckles, nights praying storms wouldn't take the herd. You can fake ink, but you can't fake sacrifice. Tomorrow, I'd start proving that. By sunrise, I was in Tom's workshop, a tin-roofed shed stacked with toolboxes and old radios he never threw away. He set down 2 mugs of coffee and unrolled a canvas bag like we were back on deployment. Inside were gadgets that looked both ancient and dangerous. Pocket recorders, mini cameras, a laptop covered in stickers from 3 decades ago. Step 1, I said, laying the forged deed on the table. We prove this isn't my handwriting. I've got checks, tax forms, military records, plenty of authentic samples. Tom nodded. Easy. We'll scan them, compare stroke pressure, angles. A handwriting expert will eat this alive in court. Step 2, I continued. We make Derek expose himself. He's cocky, brags when he thinks nobody's listening. Tom's eyes glinted. That's where I come in. I've got mics small enough to fit in a ball cap buckle, and this, he held up a unit the size of a deck of cards, picks up calls through walls. His garage is detached, right? Perfect acoustics. I could already picture Derek pacing around, whispering into his phone, convinced the world was his. Step 3, I said. We take it to someone who knows the system. My old attorney, Campbell, still practices downtown. Man's dry as dust, but straight as they come. Once we've got evidence, he'll know how to slam it through court before the bank finishes the transfer. Tom leaned back, arms crossed. Solid plan. But we need to move before Derek cashes that loan. Once the funds hit, untying it will be hell. We drove out that evening in Tom's truck. He parked a half-mile down from the ranch, where the mesquite cover was thick. We hiked the rest on foot, like 2 old grunts sneaking into enemy lines. The garage sat dark, but the side door latch was the same one I'd installed years ago. Knew exactly how to slip it with a pocket knife. My hands didn't shake. Inside smelled of motor oil and sawdust. Tom crouched low, attaching a recorder under the workbench, wires tucked neat and invisible. Another device went behind a shelf stacked with paint cans. Give it a day, he whispered. If he so much as orders lunch on speakerphone, we'll hear it. We stepped back into the night, locking the door as if nothing had happened. As we walked toward the truck, Tom muttered, Frank, I've got a feeling this boy's about to hand us everything we need. I glanced up at the ranch house windows glowing in the distance. Derek thought he'd built a fortress out of paperwork and arrogance. What he didn't know was that the walls were already bugged. 2 days later, I walked back into the bank with a calm face and a fire in my chest. This time I asked for certified copies of every document tied to the loan. The clerk hesitated until I dropped a line about my attorney preparing a formal challenge. That loosened her spine quick enough. 10 minutes later, I had a folder in my hands, complete with notary stamps and copies of my signature. I drove straight to Tom's place. He set up his scanner, eyes narrowing as each page slid under the light. See this? He said, pointing at the flourish on the K in my last name. Heavy ink here, but none here. Somebody traced it, probably from an old check. They pressed harder at the start, lighter at the finish. Amateur job. Hearing it confirmed what I already knew. but it still twisted my gut. Proof on paper. The land wasn't just slipping away, it was being stolen with my own forged name. That night, Tom called me over. He had the recorder hooked to a laptop, volume low, static buzzing. Caught him in the garage an hour ago. I leaned in. Derek's voice filled the speakers, cocky and confident. Don't worry, investor money's secure. The old man's name is already on the deed. He can't touch a thing. Another voice, muffled but clear enough. You sure he won't contest? Derek laughed. Frank's too old, too tired. He'll bark, but he won't bite. By the time he hires a lawyer, we'll have the loan funded and contracts signed. The ranch is ours. I gripped the table so hard my knuckles whitened. Tom glanced at me, jaw tight. The recording continued, Derek chuckling. Trust me, this is perfect timing. The idiot thinks he's still in control, but by next month I'll be running a resort, not a farm. Tom stopped the playback. That enough for you? It was more than enough. We had two weapons now, the forged paperwork and Derek's own words bragging about it. Physical proof that my so-called son-in-law wasn't just planning. He was already in motion. I sat back, breathing slow. For the first time since that envelope landed in my mailbox, I felt the tide shift. Next step's Campbell, I said. He'll know how to push this into court before Derek drains the bank. Tom poured 2 shots of bourbon, slid one my way. To turning the tables. I raised the glass, though my mind was already racing. Derek thought he'd buried me under ink and arrogance. He had no idea the first shovel of dirt had just been thrown back on him. Saturday evening, I pulled into the ranch yard before Derek got home. Laura answered the door, surprise flickering across her face. Dad, you shouldn't be here. I stepped inside anyway, laying the manila folder on the kitchen table. We need to talk. Now. She glanced toward the driveway, like she was expecting Derek to appear and rescue her. I opened the folder, spread out the certified documents, each page stamped, each one carrying the forgery of my name. Laura, look at this. Do you honestly believe I signed away the ranch? Her eyes darted across the papers. I don't know, maybe you forgot. Derek said. I pulled out my phone, tapped play. Derek's voice filled the kitchen, smug and unmistakable. The old man's name is already on the deed. He can't touch a thing. Laura froze, hand over her mouth. The recording went on, Derek laughing about perfect timing and calling me an idiot. The color drained from her face. Oh my God. Just then, the back door swung open. Derek walked in, shirt untucked, a six-pack dangling from one hand. He stopped short when he saw the spread of papers and Laura's expression. What's going on? I didn't move. She knows, about the forged signature, about the loan, about you. He set the beer on the counter, lips curling into that cocky half-smile. You think waving papers around makes you right? Those are legal, stamped, notarized. Laura's voice shook. I just heard you on Dad's phone. Derek's jaw tightened, but only for a second. Then he leaned against the counter like a man enjoying the show. Recordings can be edited, out of context. Courts don't take them seriously unless the chain of custody's perfect. And guess what? You don't have that. I slid the folder closer to him. And this? You call this legal? Any handwriting expert will rip it to shreds. He didn't even glance at the signature. He just smirked. By the time you drag an expert into court, Frank, the resort will be breaking ground. Investors will be in too deep. Judges don't like stopping jobs that create tax revenue. Laura's voice cracked. You lied to me. For the first time, Derek turned on her. I didn't lie. I simplified. This is how families build wealth. Your dad was going to die out here with his cows. I'm giving us something real." Her eyes welled, but he didn't stop. He pointed at me. "You've lived your whole life thinking sweat equals respect. Wrong. Paper equals respect. Contracts, signatures. The world believes what it sees on paper." I felt my fists ball, old reflexes itching, but I forced my voice steady. "You can fake paper. You can't fake character." He leaned in, eyes cold. "Character won't stop a bulldozer." The room went still. Laura shaking, me gripping the table edge until my knuckles turned white. Derek straightened, grabbed his six-pack again, and headed for the door. "Fight me all you want, old man," he said over his shoulder. "You're already buried under ink. Court or no court, I win." The door slammed behind him. Laura collapsed into a chair, tears running silent. "Dad, what do we do?" I looked at the papers, then at my phone still glowing with the recording. For years, I thought a Marine's toughest fight was overseas. I was wrong. The real war had walked straight into my family, and Derek had just dared me to bring it to the battlefield he thought he controlled. By Monday morning, my phone lit up with a string of missed calls. Derek had finally dropped the polite mask. The first voicemail started calm, almost rehearsed. "Frank, you don't understand how business works. Back off, let this happen, and I'll make sure you're comfortable. Fight me, and you'll regret it." The second came an hour later, voice harsher. "You think that tape will save you? Courts don't care. You push this, I'll bury you in legal fees until you can't breathe." By the third, he wasn't pretending anymore. "You try to block this loan, old man, and I swear, you won't live to see that ranch again." I played the last message twice, each word cutting deeper than the last. It wasn't just arrogance now. It was a threat. I forwarded the recordings to Tom, then drove to Campbell's law office. He promised to file an emergency injunction, but paperwork takes time. Time was exactly what I didn't have. That evening, as I left the grocery store with a bag of coffee and canned beans, a woman in a navy skirt suit approached me. She looked around nervously before speaking. "Mr. Hall?" "Yes." She lowered her voice. "I shouldn't be talking to you, but I work at Verde Bank. My name's Sarah. We've met at the 4th of July parade last year." I remembered, a young teller waving with her kids by the fire truck. She clutched her purse like it was a shield. "Listen, Derek Patterson's loan request is being fast-tracked. 400,000, secured by your ranch. Paperwork shows your consent. If the funds are released, untangling it will take months, maybe years. You'll be locked out of your land until it's resolved." My stomach dropped. How soon? Within 72 hours. He's pushing the manager hard, claiming urgency for investors. She bit her lip. "I shouldn't be saying this, but I've seen too many families ruined. You don't deserve it." I thanked her quietly. She hurried off, glancing over her shoulder like Derek himself might be watching. Driving back to Tom's, I felt the old combat rhythm return, pulse steady, mind sharp. Derek wasn't just stealing, he was accelerating, desperate to cash in before I could stop him. At Tom's table, we spread out the forged deed, the audio file, the voicemails. Tom shook his head. "He's sloppy now, threats on tape, pushing the bank too fast. He thinks fear will shut you down." I stared at the glowing screen of my phone. Derek's last words replaying in my ears, "You won't live to see that ranch again." Sarah's warning echoed too, 3 days before the money was gone for good. I leaned back, exhaling slow. "Then we've got 72 hours to end this." Tom called me the next afternoon, voice electric. "Frank, you need to see this. Bring coffee, and your lawyer." I was at his place within the hour, Campbell shuffling in behind me, briefcase in hand. Tom had the laptop hooked to a larger monitor, footage paused on the screen. "Security camera," Tom said. "Friend at the recorder's office owed me a favor. He pulled video from the day your transfer was filed." He tapped a key. The grainy image flickered to life. Derek sat at a desk, papers spread in front of him. A young clerk hovered nearby, nervous, glancing at the door. Derek took a pen, adjusted his grip, and carefully dragged the nib across the line where my name should have been. The angle of his wrist matched the stiffness in the forged signature exactly. "Pause," Campbell ordered. Tom froze the frame. Derek's tongue poked at the corner of his mouth, like a kid trying to copy homework. Campbell leaned in. "That right there will gut him. No jury alive mistakes that posture for genuine." Tom hit play again. Derek slid a thick envelope across the desk. The clerk snatched it, tucking it into a folder with shaking hands. The timestamp in the corner matched the day the forged deed appeared in my mailbox. "There's your nail in the coffin," Tom muttered. Campbell straightened, already pulling forms from his briefcase. "With this, we can request an immediate freeze on the loan. Judges don't like fraud tainting financial transactions. Add the audio recordings, the forged documents, and now this video. We're not just contesting, we're prosecuting." I stared at the screen, my gut twisting. There it was, the truth in black and white. Derek, bold as brass, forging my name like it was a parlor trick. And my daughter, did she know this side of him? Or had he lied to her too, convincing her I'd simply forgotten? Tom clapped me on the shoulder. "We've got him, brother. He can't talk his way out of a moving picture." I looked at Campbell. "How soon can you file?" "Tonight," he said. "Tomorrow morning we walk into court with a request for injunction and criminal charges. Once the judge sees this footage, Derek's loan dies on the spot." Relief washed through me, sharp and cold. For weeks I'd been on the defensive. Now, finally, the ground tilted our way. Tom grinned, a wolfish flash I hadn't seen since combat days. "Hope Derek enjoys his last night thinking he's a rich man." I closed the laptop, hands steady for the first time in months. Derek had built his little empire on a fake signature and arrogance. Tomorrow, I'd tear it down in front of everyone. The courthouse smelled of old wood polish and nerves. Campbell walked beside me, his briefcase packed like a weapon chest. Tom sat in the back row, arms folded, the quiet kind of ready. Derek entered with Laura at his side, his tie loose, grin fixed like he thought charm could bend the law. He winked at me across the aisle. When the judge called the case, Campbell rose. "Your Honor, we are here to contest an attempted fraudulent loan against my client's property. We will demonstrate that the defendant, Mr. Derek Patterson, falsified signatures, bribed a public clerk, and attempted to secure $400,000 against land he does not own." Derek's attorney, a slick man with hair too dark for his age, jumped up. "Objection. My client has legal documents notarized and filed properly." Campbell barely smiled. "And we have the truth." He placed the forged deed on the evidence table first. "Compare the signature to years of authentic records, driver's license, tax forms, military documents. Any expert will confirm this is not Mr. Hall's hand." The judge nodded. "Noted." Then Campbell pulled out the flash drive. Tom leaned forward as the screen flickered to life. The video rolled. Derek hunched over the desk, tracing my name like a bad student. Then the envelope sliding across to the clerk. The courtroom went silent except for the faint hum of the projector. Laura's hand flew to her mouth. Derek shifted in his chair, color draining from his face. "Physical proof number 2, Campbell said firmly. "Timestamp matches the day the deed was filed. This is fraud in action." The judge's gavel rapped once. "Continue." Finally, Campbell tapped my phone, already cued. Derek's voice spilled through the speakers, brash and arrogant. "The old man's name is already on the deed. He can't touch a thing. By next month, I'll be running a resort." The words echoed in the chamber like gunfire. Laura sobbed. "Derek, you told me it was legal." The judge's gaze cut through him. "Mr. Patterson, do you have any response?" His lawyer stammered something about context, about misinterpretation, but Derek slammed his palms on the table. "It doesn't matter. The land's wasted on him. I was building something better." That outburst sealed it. The judge's gavel came down hard. "Loan transaction is frozen. Property remains in sole ownership of Frank Hall. Furthermore, I am ordering immediate referral for criminal prosecution, fraud, forgery, and attempted grand larceny. Bailiff, take him." The bailiff moved fast. Derek's face twisted from cocky grin to raw panic as the cuffs snapped around his wrists. Laura wept openly, unable to meet my eyes. As they led him away, he shouted, "This isn't over, old man. You'll regret this." I stood tall, my voice steady for the first time in months. "No, Derek. You will." The courtroom doors closed behind him, chains rattling. The ranch was safe. My name was mine again. A week later, I was back on the porch of my ranch, the sun dipping low across the ridgeline. The new padlock was gone. My key turned smooth in the gate again. Tom sat beside me with a cold beer, boots propped on the railing. "Hell of a fight," he muttered. I nodded. "Never thought I'd be waging war this late in life." The cattle grazed quiet in the pasture, the same land Derek had tried to steal with a pen stroke. Laura hadn't called since the trial, and maybe she never would. But the silence didn't feel empty. It felt honest. I sipped my beer, breathed the dry Arizona air, and let the weight finally lift. I'd kept my name, my land, my dignity. That was enough. If you've listened this far, thank you. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories Men U60 USA, because stories like mine deserve to be heard.